Mark, sometimes you don't need analytical data to tell you the story. Just look at the situation, find the trend, and make the decision.
Tyler Boyd's dip in production last year better correlates with Andy Dalton being off the field than it does with A.J. Green being off the field, despite public perception.
You can't watch just highlight film because highlight film only shows the good things. Watch the player's actual game tape because you see the good and the bad.
In 7 games in 2018, where all 3 starting Rams receivers were healthy, Brandon Cooks led the trio in targets, receptions, receiving yards, and total PPR points by a considerable margin.
It's a beautiful day for football. Welcome into the RotoBros Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm Chris McConnell.
I'm Mark Wemken.
And we are the RotoBros. Mark, we have a huge show. This is going to be the most jam-packed RotoBros episode yet. We are on episode 7 of this podcast, and it's been a wild ride so far. It's about to get even crazier today. We got a ton of stuff on the docket for you guys, but first, Mark's going to tell you where you can find him.
So you can find me on Twitter at Mark Wemken. That's MarkWemken. You're also going to find me every week of the season this year, plugging 2 articles a week at thequantedge.com. The Quant Edge is a subscription-based DFS and fantasy research station that's going to have a ton of articles, podcasts, and all of the data that you need. Guys, this was a tool that I was using before they brought me on as a writer, so this is something I strongly recommend you guys utilize. You can get a free trial today, you can get a week's worth, and you can just try it. Read the articles, check out the analysis, use the research tools yourself. We got an injury impact tool. We got a wide receiver cornerback matchups tool. We got a new pace tool that I was using last night that's a lot of fun. We've got a matchups tool. Guys, you need to check out thequantedge.com.
You can find me on Twitter at Mind of McConnell, and you can also find both of us, as always, at FSA Fantasy Sports Advice and Analysis on Facebook. Go to Facebook, type in FSA Fantasy. The group will pull right up. Go ahead and join today, and you will be part of the largest, most active fantasy sports community on the planet. We don't just deal in fantasy football. We cover all fantasy sports. It's a great place to find an owner for your league, find a league for yourself. It's a great place to get and give advice, and also just to talk general fantasy sports or sports in general if you choose. So FSA Fantasy on Facebook, check it out and become part of the fun. All right, Mark. So, today has been, it is Saturday. College football kicked off today. So that's what I've been doing all day is watching college football, but I've also been trying to keep up with the day in the NFL. The NFL would not allow college football to have this day. They said absolutely not. And so we have been prepping all day pretty much for this show because there's been so much going on. We've got so much to talk about. There's been cuts. There's been trades. There have been additions. We have got a full docket tonight, and this show is absolutely jam-packed. So first of all, Mark, go ahead and tell everybody what we're going to be talking about today.
Chris, there's so much we need to talk about, and I say that at the beginning of every episode, but no, there's literally, this is probably going to be the longest episode in RotoBros history up to this point. and yeah, I get it. We're only 7 episodes in, but this episode could run pretty long. There's just so much to cover. We've got Melvin Gordon has received permission to seek a trade. There's a lot of fantasy implications there, depending on where that could go, but we don't know anything yet, so we don't need to spend too much time there. Ezekiel Elliott is close to signing. Tony Pollard's going to have to wait. And speaking as a Tony Pollard, I'm a truther. I liked Tony Pollard coming out. I thought he was underutilized. He was backing up Darrell Henderson. I loved Tony Pollard, but he's going to have to wait. We've got Jadeveon Clowney is traded. Not a ton of fantasy implications there, but it's worth noting. Carlos Hyde got traded to Houston. This affects my king, Duke Johnson. This hurts, but we'll get there. There was a massive blockbuster trade between Houston and Miami. Houston is making a ton of moves. So, Chris, we've also got to cover late round picks today. That was the premise of this show. We were going to talk about.
Yeah, that was the meat of the show. And then all this stuff started happening.
We were going to cover, and we still are. We're going to talk primarily about late round targets today, but we need to cover. I think we need to spend the most time talking about LeSean McCoy, Carlos Hyde, and this trade between Houston that sent Laramie Tunsil, Kenny Stills, and 2 picks over to Houston from Miami, and we've got 2 first-round picks, a second-round pick, and some change going over to Miami from Houston. So that's where I think we need to talk about the most, and then we can get into our favorite late-round targets in drafts as we move towards week 1.
Yeah, I think there's obviously some trades that are left to be done for fantasy for a lot of owners. So we're going to get you guys taken care of before obviously week 1 comes next weekend. Get hype! It's next weekend. We're all excited here. Okay, so let's start off with the couple of the biggest stories of the day. First of all, let's start with the 2 running backs who have been holding out, waiting for new contracts. Melvin Gordon, however, there's no contract news, but there is trade news. The Chargers have given him permission to seek a trade. And Mark, I'm going to be honest with you. First of all, I'm just going to go ahead and lay it out. I think he's going to be back in Los Angeles. I think he's going to be back with the LA Chargers. However, I mean, if you look at these suitors, I mean, there's really nobody in the league. There's only one team in the league that absolutely flat out is in desperate need for a franchise running back, and that's the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. You could argue that Houston still needs some help because we don't actually know what we have in Duke Johnson. You could argue maybe the Dolphins, but they still have Kenyon Drake and they like Kalen Ballage. And then you could argue maybe the Colts if you don't believe in Marlon Mack. But outside of that, like there's not much left to go around for Melvin Gordon. So do you think that Melvin Gordon is going to continue to hold out? Do you think he's going to be back in San Diego? Do you think he will be traded prior to the season?
Chris, I don't know what Melvin Gordon is thinking. I mean, we said over a month ago on this same podcast that he has no leverage. He still has no leverage. I don't know where he thinks he's going to go, where he's going to get top running back money. The only place he could go that would pay a running back that kind of money is Dallas. And they're about to pay Ezekiel Elliott. They're about to make Ezekiel Elliott the highest paid running back in the league. Melvin Gordon has no leverage. He hasn't had any leverage throughout this entire situation. I don't know where he's going to go. I somewhat lean on your side. I think he's going to end up as a Charger by the end of the season. I just don't know where he's going to go. This is an ugly situation. I'm still not drafting Melvin Gordon. I don't know how many games he's going to play. I don't know how long he's going to hold out, and it's not worth the headache. I would have to steal him to get him in a draft. I would need him in the 6th, 7th, or 8th round to take that risk. Otherwise, in the early part of drafts, I'm still building my starting lineup, my consistent week-to-week starting lineup. So I have no interest in Melvin Gordon until I know where he's at. It's not worth the headache.
Yeah, the risk is real. The risk is real there. And look, we're not done. We're not done with the Chargers running back situation because there's more to come on that a little later in the show. So definitely stick around for that. Moving on to Ezekiel Elliott. Ezekiel Elliott is actually close to signing a contract. So we have that with him. And this is Tony Pollard is one of the guys that would have easily made our late round running backs list that we're going to get to later on in the show. But unfortunately now he's not going to make it because Ezekiel Elliott's probably going to be suiting up in just a few days for week 1. So this is huge for the Cowboys. This is huge for the offense. This is huge for Amari. It's huge for Zach. It's huge for Michael Gallup even. And so this is going to be something that I think really, obviously having their franchise running back on a top flight elite running back in the league back in the fold, this is going to help Dallas's wild card hopes and dreams, and maybe even a chance at the divisional championship. That's if I think Philly gets hurt. Philly has gets hit with some injuries, but this really helps Dallas all the way around. Of course, I think they're happy to have him. This kind of came as a whirlwind in actuality because just a few days ago it was like they were still worlds apart.
I'm going to get called crazy for this, and I'm fine with that. This is not a take I expect a lot of people to agree with, but I do think signing Ezekiel Elliott and making him the highest paid running back in football is a negative EV move for Dallas in all facets. There are a lot of people that believe that they need Ezekiel Elliott to function. A lot of people view him as the engine that makes that offense go, and it's just not. I don't view that as accurate. This football team was completely serviceable whenever he was off the field. If you go to TQE and you punch Ezekiel Elliott's name into the injury impact tool, it's not just for injuries. You can see how efficient the team was whenever that back was off the field for a breather. So go in, use that tool over the last 2 years. There was a difference last year, but there wasn't a substantial difference in 2017. So I honestly I think there's a world where this contract makes this team worse long-term because they have so much money tied up in a franchise running back. And one thing I do want to note, is I believe that Zeke signing and Zeke being on the field and demanding that 80-90% snap share that he's going to see, I do think you need to bump down Dak Prescott's fantasy ceiling and you need to bump down Amari Cooper's fantasy ceiling because Zeke is going to warrant so much usage if they give him this contract. With Tony Pollard in the backfield, yeah, he was still going to be a workhorse running back, but he wasn't going to demand that massive opportunity share that Ezekiel Elliott is going to warrant. This means fewer pass attempts for Dak Prescott, fewer targets for Amari Cooper, possibly fewer plays run per game because they have the option to play a slower game by giving Ezekiel Elliott 25 or 30 carries.
So we're not done with running back news yet because we've got more coming, and it's with the next team we're going to talk about. The Texans pretty much remade their entire... I don't even know if Deshaun Watson and DeAndre Hopkins still play for the Texans. Does anybody know? Because they made so many moves today, they may not even be in Houston anymore.
I would hope DeAndre Hopkins and Deshaun Watson are. Those two should be untouchable.
So the first big news, obviously, this was the first big anvil of news to drop today. And this was Jadeveon Clowney has been traded to the Seattle Seahawks. Clowney has traded the Seahawks for a third-round pick, a 2020 third-round pick, and linebackers Barkevious Mingo and Jacob Martin. I don't know where to begin with this. This was, to me, this was just an absolute fleece for the Seahawks. And you want to talk about an impressive Seahawks defensive front seven. Listen to this. Bobby Wagner, 4-time All-Pro. Jadeveon Clowney, 3-time Pro Bowler. KJ Wright has 4 100-plus tackle seasons to his name. Jerron Reed, 10.5 sacks in 2018. LJ Collier was a 2019 first-round pick this year. And Ziggy Ansah has 48 career sacks. This is going to be a dangerous NFL defense next year for the Seattle Seahawks. So this is a team whose arrow is pointing all the way up. But the Texans, is their arrow pointing up or down? Because this wasn't the only move they made today. They also traded for Carlos Hyde.
Yeah, the trade for Carlos Hyde, and that was something we saw coming. This is not a good running back, number one. He was going to get cut by Kansas City. Kansas City was able to flip him for something. They went and targeted a sub-optimally run franchise. Houston needs a GM desperately because this franchise is getting run into the ground.
If today's not an indication that Houston needs a GM, I don't know what is.
Yeah, and the worst part is, did they get fleeced on these two trades? Yes, but they had no leverage in either trade. They had no leverage shopping the players that they were shopping and going after the players they were going after. They needed offensive lineman help bad, and they did acquire a good offensive lineman in who they got. That was a trade that needed to be made because they needed to protect their franchise player in Deshaun Watson. So I look at some of these trades and yeah, they got fleeced, but they were trades that they had to make. Jadeveon Clowney was getting, pardon my French, he was getting dicked around by Houston so badly that I don't think he wanted to play in Houston. It was similar to the Trent Williams situation that's going on in Washington. I don't think he wanted to play week 1. So this was like all right, we need to get him out of town before we lose all the leverage we have. So they got fleeced, but at least they got something for him, you know?
Right. And here was another thing that was, they traded Carlos Hyde, or they traded for Carlos Hyde, and they traded an offensive lineman. So the Texans trade an important position for a player that is not good at football, number one, and number two, plays a position that, in our opinion, doesn't really matter a whole lot in running back. So it was a puzzling move, and he was likely gonna get cut. He was pretty much guaranteed to get cut anyway. So you could have got him for a lot cheaper, and you give up an offensive lineman. Now they do come back, however, and they do the trade obviously with Miami, and they receive Kenny Stills, Laramie Tunsil, a 2024 and a 2021 6th. Miami in that trade receives a 2020 first round pick, a 2021 first round pick, a 2021 second, tackle Julian Davenport, and cornerback Johnson Batamosi. So I like this trade for the Dolphins. I don't like this trade for the Texans because I understand the Laramie Tunsil aspect of it. I think they gave up too much to get him. And I understand it's a franchise left. He's probably a franchise left tackle, but that is a high price to pay. And you got Kenny Stills, who in my opinion is the healthy, better version of Will Fuller, which would sound like a good thing. But you got Kiki and Will, who are apparently healthy now. I think this renders Kiki Kuti pretty much irrelevant. I don't think Kenny Stills personally has a lot of value unless Will Fuller gets hurt again, which is obviously highly possible. But that was puzzling why they decided to get Kenny Stills in the trade. But Laramie Tunsil's a huge get for them, so I guess it's good if it works out. They just gave up a lot for him. Miami, though, just collecting the draft picks. They get a tackle in Julian Davenport, who protected the blind side for Deshaun Watson last year. He wasn't very good. He gave up, Deshaun Watson was sacked a league high 61 times. So Julian Davenport's got some things to work on. What about this trade, and do you like the Kenny Stills aspect of it?
I'm interested in the Kenny Stills aspect, and what a lot of people don't know about Kenny Stills is he has a lot of experience running out of the slot. A lot of people view him as a situational deep threat, and he is. He's a very good field stretcher, but he has experience running routes over the middle. He has experience running high percentage routes. He runs crisp routes. He's got good footwork. Kenny Stills is a good receiver. He's not bad. I would probably argue that Kenny Stills is a top 30 talent at the position. He's not an alpha. He's not DeAndre Hopkins, but I definitely think he's going to be a great complement in those 3 wide receiver sets running out of the slot. One thing this kind of speaks to me is that maybe Keke Coutie's injury is a little more severe than we thought. Otherwise, this team is deep as hell at receiver. This was a good move for Houston. I do think they got fleeced, but they also got better. They got fleeced on value, but the team got better. As far
I can
as
agree with that.
Yeah, as long as Laramie Tunsil is concerned, he allowed the 12th fewest pressures at the position last year among qualified offensive tackles. He's in some pretty elite company with like Brian Bulaga, Tyron Smith, Orlando Brown, Taylor Lewin. He played good football last year. He ranked 19th out of 58 qualified offensive tackles in pass pro efficiency. This is a huge boost for Deshaun Watson. This is something that we needed to have happen. Another thing that I think is worth mentioning is this is a boost for the entire Houston pass game. They got an upgrade on the offensive line, and the defense lost an integral cog in that defensive front. The defense got worse. So this could mean more pass-heavy game scripts for Houston. Houston is going to be in a lot of close games, and they're going to be in a lot of shootouts. They could be playing a lot of catch-up.
That's exactly what I was thinking before we even had the show, before you and I even got on the call here for the show. Like, I was thinking, wait a minute, like the defense got worse. Look, they still got Watt, but we'll see if he can even stay healthy. They've got some decent pieces on the defense, but without a doubt, they got worse. And so now they're probably going to be, they're obviously going to be giving up more points than they did last year, I would imagine. And so what does that equal? That equals trying to play catch up. That equals throwing the football. And now you've got a running back in Duke Johnson, who we're going to talk about here in just a second. You got a running back in Duke Johnson, who is a good pass catcher. You've got all these receivers now, and of course you've got Deshaun Watson. So this really, I think, increases in a way Deshaun Watson's fantasy value, and really, maybe even Duke Johnson as well. And some of these pass catchers, I don't know how much more of a ceiling DeAndre Hopkins can have. So I think he's pretty much at his max. But everybody else, I think this could help because they're going to be throwing the ball a lot more. So I think you nailed it right on the head with that.
So here's my question to you. And I kind of have an idea of how I think this is going to play out in my head, but who do you think hurts Duke Johnson more? Do you think the acquisition of Carlos Hyde does? Or do you think the acquisition of Kenny Stills does?
Carlos Hyde.
I would argue Kenny Stills. I would argue Kenny Stills because a big reason I was in on Duke Johnson was this Keke Coutee injury. And I thought that Duke Johnson was actually going to see a lot of underneath passing usage while Coutee was recovering. And I think now that they have Kenny Stills to man the slot while Coutee is out, I don't think this is good for Duke Johnson at all. I'm not worried about Duke Johnson outperforming Carlos Hyde at all. I think Carlos Hyde might warrant some early down work or some like change of pace work when they want to slow the game down a little, like if they were to get a 2-touchdown lead. But I think in neutral and negative game scripts, it was going to be all Duke Johnson regardless with Carlos Hyde. I just view him as depth. So the Kenny Stills acquisition, I do think hurts Duke Johnson more than Carlos Hyde does.
And these trades that Houston did, it had a rippling effect for several players. Duke Johnson is one of them. You and I have talked about it. We both still like Duke Johnson for the most part. We both still like where we're able to get him from an ADP standpoint. And we don't like Carlos Hyde. We don't think Carlos Hyde is really going to have that much of an effect on him. Look, I'm fine with Duke Johnson. I don't think it really affects him that much, to be honest with you. I know from the Kenny Stills aspect, I think obviously you think it affects him a little bit more. Let's go to the other team's running backs, I should say. Laramie Tunsil leaving, you are a little worried about Kenyon Drake. You're still more worried than I am. I understand losing. I'm going to recognize that losing a guy like Laramie Tunsil is not just some small deal. I'm still drafting Kenyon Drake, especially at the value that he's providing right now. But I do think that this could be a little bit worrisome for him.
Consider me completely out on Dolphins running backs at this point. I mean, I was soaking up Kenyon Drake in the 8th when I thought he was a value, but this is not a good environment. This team is not going to run a lot of plays per game. We don't know what kind of opportunity share Kenyon Drake is going to get if this team is as obsessed with Kalen Ballage as they're leading us on to believe. I don't think it's a good situation. And in the 9th, you're shooting for a ceiling, and Kenyon Drake is a phenomenal athlete, good running back, elusive as they come, can catch the football, runs crisp routes. He's a multi-purpose 3-down back from a skill set perspective, but I just don't think Miami sees him that way. So consider me completely out on Miami running backs.
Now, what about Miami wide receivers? Because obviously Kenny Stills leaving does some things to that receiving core. Now you have, we talked about this was an episode or two ago, where Kenny Stills being traded or cut would allow a guy like that I've loved from the beginning, Preston Williams, to really sort of step up and be that alpha wide receiver. And I've been on record a couple episodes ago, as you know, saying by week 9, he's going to be their wide receiver 1. And I thought that was with or without Kenny Stills. Even without, I think you could even push that timeline up a little bit. What do you think about Preston Williams? Obviously, you're a big Albert Wilson guy. Even Devontae Parker, who has failed to live up to expectations at this point. Look, I understand Fitzpatrick and Rosen behind that offensive line without Larry Tunsil. It's not a good thing. I understand it, but I still think that there is room for at least one valuable Miami wide receiver. I do, and I don't know who it's going to be. Will it be? I don't think it's going to be Parker. I think it's either going to be Albert or it's going to be Preston. My vote's with Preston. I believe you're probably going to lean toward Albert Wilson if I had to guess. But what do you think about this receiving core now with Kenny Stills on the outs?
They're both worth owning in 12-team PPR leagues. They're both worth targeting in best ball. But dude, give me Albert Wilson. Led the NFL in yards per route run last year at 3.03. And we've been over this. We went over this with Elliott, and that doesn't make him an elite receiver. I do think that makes him a dangerous underneath threat because he can make guys miss. He's going to be running out of the slot. The slot is all his with Kenny Stills gone.
There's nobody there that's going to take it from him.
Albert Wilson is going to get all of the slot work. Preston Williams is raw. I think he's going to be a great outside receiver, a great perimeter receiver. He's got a ton of ball skills, elite size at 6'4". He's going to need some time to develop into that alpha, but I do view Preston Williams as a future alpha. I think he's still more of a 2020 and beyond as far as consistent fantasy production is concerned, but he's going to get targeted. He's going to play a lot of snaps. And you're probably going to open the season with any sort of rotation of Preston Williams, Jakeem Grant, and Devontae Parker on the outside. Kenny Stills is in the slot. And no quarterback in the NFL over the last 2 years has targeted the slot more than Ryan Fitzpatrick has. Give me all the Albert Wilson, man.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. And like I've said before that I think it's going to take time for Preston. I think by the end of week 7, week 8, going into week 9, that range, that's where I think he's really going to have his biggest value spike. All right, so let's move on to some players who got cut today because there's one really big name that we want to discuss, and that's LeSean McCoy. LeSean McCoy, former running back for the Buffalo Bills, he's cut, and there are some rumors right now that the Eagles and the Patriots and the Chiefs and the Chargers are interested in LeSean McCoy. I'm going to tell you guys right now, I don't buy this Eagles-Patriots thing for a second. I don't buy it for a second. However, the Chiefs and the Chargers, I think, make a lot more sense. And I think they make total sense, actually. And it's interesting with the Chargers because are they going to wait on Melvin Gordon? They obviously do not want to give him that huge contract, okay, that he thinks he so rightfully deserves. And it's interesting that they give him permission to seek a trade on the very day that LeSean McCoy gets cut. So maybe this was part of their plan all along. They're like, you know what? We're going to let this ride, and then we're going to see if LeSean McCoy really does get released. And if he does, we're going to give Melvin permission to seek a trade. We're going to save a ton of money at running back, and they're going to do what you and I would, how you and I would hope more teams run a team is have a committee at running back that can have pretty much for the most part the same effect that Melvin Gordon has had, and we've seen that happen before when Melvin Gordon's been out. So this is something that I think we really need to watch for. To me, though, I think the leader in the clubhouse should be Tampa, because Tampa needs a running back. We just talked about it. They need a running back more than any team in the NFL that could carry the load. And I think at least for one more year, LeSean McCoy could be that guy. The question in Tampa would again be the offensive line. How good is it? How much has it improved? But with the Chiefs and the Chargers, sign me up all day long for LeSean McCoy.
I'm going to disagree with you on the Chiefs and Chargers, because if I'm LeSean McCoy, I'm getting with my agent and saying, dude, I still want to play. I want to start, and I want to make starter money. So if I'm LeSean McCoy, the first person I'm on the phone with is Tampa Bay and saying, hey, I can beat out Peyton Barber and I can beat out Ronald Jones and I can be an every down back at 32. I'm calling Tampa Bay and saying, I will take what you guys will give me and I will be your starter. I'm not calling up the Chargers and getting tied into that mess with Melvin Gordon. And I'm not, if I'm LeSean McCoy, I'm not going to sandbag Melvin Gordon by saying, yeah, I'll go be your replacement. Screw you. You know, I'm not calling Kansas City and going, yeah, I'll come and be Damian Williams' backup. Because Chris, you and I are going to go back and forth on this. I know we disagree here, but LeSean McCoy at 31 years old is not as good at football as Damian Williams is at 27.
I think that's a horribly cold take.
Hear me out on this. 2016, LeSean McCoy posted a 52.0 elusive rating. He ranked inside the top 10 in 2016. 2017, he's outside the top 25 at 27.2. His elusive rating declined by 50%. 2018, 27.8. It didn't get any better. This is a metric that it completely eliminates how good the team is around you and is telling you what the running back is doing on his own. It tells you what kind of space he's creating on his own. At age 30, that's when LeSean McCoy hit his elusiveness wall. And this is a running back that has made a living off of being one of the most elusive backs in the game. And that's just not who he is anymore. He would be a backup to Damian Williams. Damian Williams is a scheme fit where he's at. His coaches love him. His teammates are praising the hell out of him. He would not supplant Damian Williams right now unless Williams hits a wall or gets hurt.
I think you're right for the first couple weeks, but as the season goes along, I think that would be LeSean McCoy's job, because you're giving me these metrics about his elusive rating going down. Look, I don't think it's a coincidence that his elusive rating has gone down as his offensive line, since he's been in Buffalo, has gotten worse. And
Buffalo was a playoff team in 2017. It's not like their offensive line was bad. LeSean McCoy still saw 287 opportunities.
It wasn't, their offensive line wasn't great. And last year, their offensive line was absolutely horrendous. They had a rookie quarterback. They had no other threatening offensive weapons. They were gunning for LeSean McCoy. Didn't have any help in the back. Like, they were gunning for LeSean McCoy. He was the only person that anybody was worried about. And I'm not disagreeing that he hasn't lost a step, but he's not. This isn't 2012 LeSean McCoy. I get that.
But if that's the case, then why did Chris Ivory have a better elusive rating than LeSean McCoy?
Chris Ivory had a better elusive rating than David Johnson. And David Johnson was in the same situation last year.
I'm not talking about David Johnson. I'm talking about LeSean McCoy, because these two were in the same situation. Why did Chris Ivory behind the same offensive line with the same quarterback have a better elusive rating than somebody who is supposedly one of the best, most elusive players in the NFL?
Because maybe the elusive rating metric doesn't really mean a whole lot. And I don't think it does. And I think this is a perfect example of that, because again, I go back to David Johnson, a running back who we know is very elusive, who's one of the best running backs in the league, but had an even low, we talk about how low LeSean McCoy's elusive rating. David Johnson had an even lower, 24.8. The lowest of his career was his elusive rating. And that was last season. What happened last season? The Cardinals had a rookie quarterback that didn't play very well. They had bad offensive coaching and bad offensive play calling. Same with the Bills. They had a horrible offensive line. And now they had a worse offensive line than the Bills did, granted, but they were still I think Bills were the 30th, and then the Cardinals were the 32nd, if I remember correctly. They were in pretty much the same exact situation, and nobody can tell me that David Johnson's just not an elusive running back. No, he's a very elusive running back. But his rookie season, I think he had the highest elusive rating, which is like 54.8 or something like that. This is happening because the offensive line was that bad. The situation around him was not good. And you've had Larry Fitzgerald that's had has had some injuries. You lost Christian Kirk, who you drafted in the second round last year. You didn't have any threat at tight end that was really worth a damn. This is what I'm talking about. I think LeSean McCoy has one solid year left in the tank. And I think if he ended up with a team like the Chargers or the Chiefs, I think or even really Houston for that matter, but I think that's out of the question now with Carlos. We disagree on LeSean McCoy, but I think that he's got one more solid season left in him. And I think wherever he goes, I don't care where he goes, I think he's going to have a better season this year than he did last year. And he's going to show us a lot more than he did in 2018.
I'm fact checking you on David Johnson right now because I don't agree with that.
Fact check it.
Yeah.
I checked it before the show, Mark.
Yeah, I am fact checking it right now. And he wasn't, David Johnson has never been all that elusive according to the metrics as a running back. And we've had this argument before. David Johnson is somebody who has extremely efficient footwork through the hole. He's somebody that can actually absolutely dominate when he gets out in space. He's an elite route runner, and he has elite vision. David Johnson has never been somebody that has been dominant as far as shedding tackles is concerned. He's never ranked above 2.8 yards per contact per attempt in a season. His elusiveness on film is completely different from LeSean McCoy's always was. So I don't like comparing the two situations because the two accumulated yardage in different ways. LeSean McCoy has always been an elite tackle shedder, an elite avoided tackle running back. David Johnson has never quite been that. He's created his own space with lateral agility and making guys miss in that aspect. But as far as like actually driving through contact and shedding tackles and breaking arm tackles, that's never been David Johnson's game. That was LeSean McCoy's game.
LeSean McCoy's never been the most physical running back in the world either. I mean, we're talking about the most consistent, literally the most consistent running back in the last decade. And this is a guy that has always been more finesse than physical. Now, he's gotten beaten up and he's taken some hits, but he's been described as injury prone. He's not really injury prone to me. He seems like he's always dealing with some sort of injury, but it seems like he's always playing through it as well. So I'm not going to label him injury prone like a lot of people would. Look, I just think that the offensive line and the situation have a lot more to do with the elusive rating than a lot of people want to believe. And I think any running back, I don't care if it's okay, maybe not Saquon, because Saquon is our god, right? So maybe not Saquon, but Alvin Kamara, Zeke, you put them in Buffalo, you put them in Arizona of last year and Buffalo of last, they're not going to be the same player either. And I don't think that would mean that their elusiveness has gone down. We know Alvin Kamara is a very elusive player, but you put him behind Buffalo's offensive line, I don't think he's doing much better. So that's,
all right, Chris. All right, counterpoint. Dalvin Cook ranked 6th in elusive rating last year. Saquon Barkley ranked 9th. Melvin Gordon ranked 10th. 3 terrible offensive lines. 3 running backs that created space on their own by shedding tackles and avoiding tackles. That's what elusive rating is. Elusive rating basically takes yards after contact and avoided tackles. And what an avoided tackle isn't getting an open space and juking a guy and not being touched. Avoided tackles don't count unless you're touched. That's how they're tracked. So it's tackle shedding, not just tackle avoidance. You got to think tackle shedding. And that's never been David Johnson's game, but it has been LeSean McCoy's. He's been a slippery running back over the course of his career, and he wasn't last year. He was not slippery. He did not bounce off of contact like he used to.
I don't believe that just because you are not an elite tackle breaker does not mean you are not an elusive running back.
But that's not what I'm saying. But that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that LeSean McCoy's game, he was an elite elusive back. He was that elite tackle shedder, and he wasn't. He wasn't who he used to be. That was my biggest issue.
Who were the 3 running backs you just named? Melvin Gordon, Saquon Barkley, and who else?
Dalvin Cook.
Awesome. Did any of them have rookie quarterbacks? Did any of them have?
But they had bad
not
offensive
have dangerous
lines.
weapons around them.
But they had bad offensive lines.
Okay, but that's not what I'm not talking about just the offensive line, Mark. I'm talking about the entire combination of horrible luck. They had a rookie quarterback who, not only that, it wasn't like, at least David Johnson had a quarterback who everybody said was the most NFL ready, most polished thrower of the football in Josh Rosen coming out of the draft. The Bills didn't even have that. I mean, they had everybody. Apparently, everybody thinks that Josh Allen is the white version of Lamar Jackson, which I think is total ludicrous. But I mean, you had an inaccurate quarterback who needed to definitely work on his mechanics and wasn't a great passer of the football. And so nobody's worried about Josh Allen. Nobody's worried about Robert Foster and Zay Jones right now. So that's what it's the combination of things. You can deal with just a bad offensive line and be a superior running back. But you put Melvin Gordon in that same situation, his elusiveness goes down.
Chris, I think we need to just kind of agree to disagree on this, because I don't believe there's a correlation in quarterback play and offensive line play with elusive rating per PFF, but we can move on. I mean, if you think LeSean McCoy is going to be worth something on another team, that's fine. I want to talk about late round running backs, and we need to talk about the fallout with LeSean McCoy's cutting, because one of our darling late round running backs is no longer a late round running back, and that's Devin Singletary.
He is graduated, Mark. Devin Singletary is graduated. Look, we disagree on this a little bit, not as much as the LeSean McCoy subject, but we disagree on Devin Singletary a little bit. Devin Singletary was my number 5 running back in the draft this year, and I really, really liked him. He was compared to LeSean McCoy a lot just because of his being able to cut on a dime, his elusiveness, and his vision. And so this was a guy, and look, he's 5'8". Okay, and he's a smaller back. He's a solid pass catcher, but he didn't do a ton of that in college. So he's definitely got to prove that he can continue to do so there. But look, they've got Frank Gore, they've got TJ Yeldon. I think what we're looking at here is a ratio of work, looking at like a 70, 20, 10 sort of split for Devin Singletary, Frank Gore, and TJ Yeldon. And I'll be honest with you, I actually like TJ Yeldon as the handcuff a little bit more than Frank Gore, I think.
If you're expecting a 70% opportunity share in Buffalo for Devin Singletary, I think you're reaching a lot. This guy was a bell cow in college. He was a workhorse. He had an 86th percentile college dominator per player profiler. He also had a 7.7% target share. He is a do-it-all back, but I think you're downplaying what that team could do with TJ Yeldon. I think they kept him for a reason. He's a good pass catcher. I would probably argue TJ Yeldon is the best receiver in that backfield.
I can agree with that.
I do not see a 70% opportunity share for Devin Singletary. I see anywhere between 40 and 50 going Devin Singletary's way. But another thing for me is I don't see this offense being much better than it was. I do think it'll be a little bit better. So I don't know how weighted his opportunities are going to be. I'm still very hesitant. And guys, I'm speaking as somebody that has about 15% Devin Singletary in best ball. I've been drafting him when he was a value all year long, but I have no incentive to chase Devin Singletary when I've got a ton of shares in the 14th and 15th round. And he went at 5.7 in a best ball I did today. 5.7 or even in the 6th or 7th round, consider me completely out.
Yeah, I think that's a little too high, especially in best ball for me. Okay, I could get on with it. I could get on board with that. I'll go down to a 60-30-10. How about it? 60-30-10. I think that's fair. A 60-30-10 split for those three. But again, I like, if you're looking for the handcuff for Devin Singletary, I honestly think it's going to be TJ Yeldon over Frank Gore. And another thing, like you said, this is a guy that has been going undrafted in some season-long leagues. In 10-team leagues, he was absolutely going undrafted. In 12-team leagues, he was going undrafted here and there. There's several leagues where I drafted him in 12-teamers. There's several leagues where I had to pick him up in free agency today in a 12-teamer. But people do not need, I like Devin Singletary, okay? But he is not likely to do what we believe Miles Sanders, Josh Jacobs, David Montgomery are going to do. I don't think that either one of us believe the offense is going to be as good as any of those offenses will be. So I don't think that people need to just automatically assume, oh my God, LeSean McCoy's gone. Devin Singletary, Frank Gore's old. TJ Yeldon could never do it on his own. Devin Singletary is an RB2. I don't think so. I think people don't need to overreact too much, and I think they need to realize that he is an RB3 right now. I would argue maybe on the high end RB3, but he's an RB3. So you don't want to throw him in your starting lineup in week 1. Please don't do it. Let's wait. Yeah. Have him on your bench. Yeah, have him on your bench. Keep him on your bench. That's fine. And if you want to take him in best ball, I don't have a problem with that. Don't take him in the 5th round, Mark.
Absolutely not. Do not take him in the 5th, 6th, or even 7th round. Once we get to the 8th, we can start talking, because that's when the Royce Freemans of the world are coming off the board. That's when Tyler Boyd is gone. Yeah, of course. Tyler Boyd is gone. Allen Robinson is gone. Then we can start talking about Devin Singletary. But I just mentioned Royce Freeman. I am buying Royce Freeman as my first late round running back. Royce Freeman is the RB44 off the board. He's going outside the top 100. I like Royce Freeman. I like his athletic profile. He's got an 87th percentile speed score per player profiler, an 85th percentile agility score, college dominator at 30.4%. He drew a target share of 8.3. He can catch the football. He's not a bad football player. His usage last year was suboptimal. That coaching staff got overhauled. I think this is going to be a more even opportunity share split for Royce Freeman and Phillip Lindsay.
I tend to agree with you. I think I like Royce Freeman more than I did last year. I think he is still a little more raw than a guy like Phillip Lindsay is. I don't think that he is as good of a overall football player as Phillip Lindsay is. I think that's clear as day. And I've said this before. I don't think Latavius Murray is a great football player either, but he's been in these situations that work for him. Like, you don't have to be a great football player necessarily, but if you're put in a great situation and you are used in a way that is good for your skill set, which I think guys like Latavius Murray and Royce Freeman are, that's perfect. And I think you can be very impactful for a football team in that manner. And I think Royce Freeman could do that. I do agree with you. We agree that Phillip Lindsay's receiving is probably going to go up and his rushing is probably going to come down a little bit. I think you're probably on the more drastic end of that than I am. But I do believe that Royce Freeman is a better option this season than he was last year, and I like him a little bit more. And I agree with somebody taking him in the late rounds where he's going right now. It's actually a little surprising that he's going where he's going right now. So I'm on board with you on Royce Freeman. We're not exactly on the same level of excitement.
To be completely fair with you, I am coming around on Phillip Lindsay. I don't want him in the 5th or 6th round. I would feel more comfortable with him as my RB4, just like how I want Royce Freeman as my RB4 and not even my RB3 or 2. My big thing with this team is I'm projecting positive game scripts. Vic Fangio's defense has been one of the most dominant units over the course of Fangio's career in the NFL. He is as decorated a defensive coordinator as anybody else in football. And I do think this team with Joe Flacco at the helm or possibly a rookie quarterback in Drew Lock down the road, we're going to see more positive game scripts. And I think the opportunity share is going to be fairly split. I think we could see 55% Royce Freeman, 45% Phillip Lindsay. Maybe some games we see 50-50 of each. But at ADP, I just want Royce Freeman a little bit more. You know, he ranked 21st out of 62 qualified running backs in PFF elusive rating, 15th out of 62 in yards after contact per attempt. He had 13 carries of 10 or more yards. More optimal usage is coming. I like the ADP. If Phillip Lindsay's ADP dips like maybe one more round over the next 5 or 6 days, I still have 25 more best balls I need to do and 2 more season-long leagues. So if I can get Phillip Lindsay at a little bit more of a discount now that Royce Freeman is generating some hype, I'm going to own a little bit more Phillip Lindsay. But at the moment, I still want more Royce Freeman.
Yeah, and I think that's where our biggest disagreement is. You said you want Phillip Lindsay as your RB4. I'm fine with him as even my RB2. That's how much I believe in the guy. Obviously not my RB1, but if I can get him as my RB2 and 3, I'm thrilled with that. 4, I think that's probably pushing a little bit. I don't think you're really ever going to get him as your RB4 unless you are literally going running back. But continuing on, moving on with running backs, because we got a lot of guys to get to here at different positions. Sticking with the running backs, though, we've already mentioned LeSean McCoy, so we won't dive into that too much more. I think he can be a solid late round pick, depending on where he goes. You're not as high on him. Dion Lewis is a guy that we both think, obviously in PPR and best ball for you. I think we both agree on Dion Lewis. He's a guy that could really surprise some people because I don't think either one of us are that big on Derrick Henry.
Dion Lewis is a great plug. He caught over 60 balls last year. I think there's some more optimal usage coming. I didn't like how they ran him between the tackles last year. I think he's more effective as an outside zone runner, a la Phillip Lindsay. I thought if you give Dion Lewis Phillip Lindsay's running usage last year, his efficiency will skyrocket. He's going to continue drawing the lion's share of the backfield targets. They're not going to excessively target Derrick Henry. We don't know how to project game scripts for this team. And that's why I view Derrick Henry as such a dangerous pick, while I view Dion Lewis as kind of a perfect late round, high floor, high ceiling dart throw. He could be useful. He caught 59 balls last year, saw 67 targets. Both were career highs. He saw 917 total yards that you're getting in the 14th round. I think if we see a few more touchdowns on his resume, he scored 9 in New England in 2017. He's not going to score 9 or 10 touchdowns with Tennessee, but even 5 or 6 could boost his value significantly. And as a 14th round pick in a PPR league, you could do a lot worse.
Yeah, I think Dion Lewis is one of those primary pass catchers who is severely forgotten about. I think another one that is severely forgotten about is Chris Thompson for the Washington Redskins. My thing about Chris Thompson is I'm not buying him really wherever he's going unless there was an injury to Adrian Peterson or Darius Geis. I think Darius and Adrian are going to absolutely just own that haul this year. But you like Chris Thompson a little bit more than me.
I do like Chris Thompson as like a last round pick or a late round dart throw. Over his last 20 games, he's caught 80 balls on 109 targets. He's accumulated 778 receiving yards over that same span. He's got minimal competition for backfield targets. Adrian Peterson is not going to warrant any receiving usage. Darius Geis, I will say this, they did split the route running work with the first team back in week 3 of the preseason. Chris Thompson ran a route on 8 of Case Keenum's 15 dropbacks. Darius Geis ran a route on 7 of 15. I think both of these guys, obviously Darius Geis in the 9th, I think he's right there with Royce Freeman for me. He's one of my highest owned running backs in best ball, but Chris Thompson is free. He's got home run upside because he's a phenomenal athlete. He's got good vision with the ball in his hands and good elusiveness, but that receiving usage, 80 catches and 778 receiving yards over his last 20 games on a team that's going to be bad and going to be playing a lot of catch up. And with Case Keenum, who can't throw the football down the field, he's got no receivers out on the perimeter. Give me Chris Thompson in best ball all day.
All right, Chase Edmonds is the guy that I'm not on at all. I will own 0 shares. I don't think he's going to be, outside of a David Johnson injury, I don't think he's going to be relevant hardly whatsoever. But you have some stuff on Chase Edmonds. You tend to like him a little bit more. Justice Hill's coming up next, so we're going to get to him. But let's start with Chase Edmonds.
Oh, dude, give me any cheap piece of the Arizona offense that I can get, especially a guy that can catch the football. Chase Edmonds averaged 2.63 yards per route run during the preseason. That was 12th in the NFL for among running backs. He can catch the football. I think he's got standalone satellite back value on top of elite handcuff value. And there's a world where David Johnson catches 70, 80 balls and Chase Edmonds catches 30 or 40, maybe even 50, depending on how many plays per game this offense can run. Listen, they don't have the receiving depth we thought they did. Andy Isabella is still raw. Hakeem Butler just got put on IR. We still don't know what they have in Keyshawn Johnson. All they really have for consistency's sake right now is Larry Fitzgerald and Christian Kirk. They've got David Johnson. I think these running backs, this backfield in general is going to warrant a high target share, especially with a rookie quarterback and no offensive line in front of that quarterback.
So we both like Justice Hill. However, I think you like Justice Hill a bit more than me. I'm all in on Mark Ingram. I've been grabbing a lot of shares of Mark Ingram lately. This is going to be, bar none, in my opinion, the most run-heavy team in the NFL, the Baltimore Ravens. I think they're going to be successful running the football with Lamar Jackson, with Justice Hill, and with Mark Ingram. But I think Mark Ingram he's going to obviously get the majority of those goal line touchdowns. He's going to get the majority of the yards. And this isn't just a guy that's like can't catch the football. I mean, he can do it all. Mark Ingram has been a workhorse for years. And I don't necessarily think that Justice Hill is just going to take over like an Alvin Kamara-esque role on this team. I think you'll see him mixed in here and there. I think Justice Hill, to me, is more of a guy to look at more in 2020. I don't think unless there is an injury to Mark Ingram that he's going to have much of a 2019 impact. What do you think about Justice Hill in 2019?
I absolutely adore Justice Hill as a late round pick. You can still get him in the 12th or 13th round. 82nd percentile speed score per player profiler, 95th percentile burst score. He had an 8.7% college target share, so he can catch the football. And guys, before I go on, I've been quoting Player Profiler a lot. Matt Kelly, the Podfather, runs that website. This is a free tool. I do not pay for this. You have access to this tool. And one of my goals on this podcast is to make you guys better analysts, better researchers, better players. You need to have Player Profiler bookmarked on your laptop whenever you're researching, right there next to the Quan Edge. Use Player Profiler. Players like Justice Hill and Devin Singletary are why this tool exists and why it's so useful. You need to be using this tool. But Justice Hill is a freak athlete. Phenomenal athlete. His best comparable on that website based on college production and usage and his workout metrics is Reggie Bush. It's Reggie Bush, and he's a phenomenal athlete. People need to remember this is the same guy that supplanted Chris Carson at OK State. And we know how good Chris Carson is at football. Justice Hill warranted more usage. He warranted a higher opportunity share than Chris Carson did, and that didn't need an injury to happen.
That to me, reviewing their college, that to me was more so because we know Oklahoma State, the Pokes, love to throw the football. So I think Justice Hill ended up being a better fit for them because he was a better catcher of the football. But look, I'm not taking anything, but I like Justice Hill. I think he's a solid running back. I think he's a good fit for this team. Me personally, I think I'm just all in on Mark. I don't think he's really going to do much for, while Mark Ingram's there.
My one argument for that is this offense in Baltimore, there's a world where they split the work. You give Mark Ingram 55% and you split the opportunity, with the remaining 45% opportunity share between Justice Hill and Gus Edwards. And Justice Hill just takes it and runs with it. He's so talented. He's so dynamic and athletic that I don't think he will need elite usage to be relevant. I think his actual standalone usage, meaning how the plays they have designed for him, will be optimal enough that he will be productive on limited touches. I think he's good enough, and he fits this system well enough that even with Mark Ingram warranting the lion's share of running back opportunities, that Justice Hill is still going to be fantasy relevant, even with only 35 or 40% of the opportunity share.
A couple more running backs quickly we'll get to before we get to the most important position on the field, quarterback. Dare Ogunbowale, we had a segment on the last episode about Dare in the Tampa Bay Bucks backfield. This is a guy you and I both like. He's got a lot of opportunity, even more now because Andre Ellington has been cut. So he outperformed Andre Ellington he's outperformed everybody in that backfield on the field. So this is a guy that I think is a really, if they don't add a guy like LeSean or they don't add a guy like Melvin Gordon, Dare Ogunbowale is a guy who could provide a lot of late round value. And I don't think it's going to be immediate. He's not going to be the week one starter. He's going to be the primary pass catcher. That's for damn sure. But as far as the primary ball carrier, I don't know if that's ever going to be the case. And if it is the case at some point during the season, it's not going to be right away. We're going to have to wait for him to be the primary ball carrier as the season progresses. But he's going to immediately step in and have an impact for that team. How much, we don't know. But it's good, again, I talk about it all the time, it's good to have the names that we're giving you, these guys that you can get later on the draft. And Dare's pretty much free. Nobody's even drafting him still. And his sort of, I guess, his hype meter has gone up significantly in the past 2 weeks. So this is a guy that you can still get for free. It's good to have these types of names in the chamber so that you can pull the trigger later on. A guy that you wanted to mention, Nyheim Hines, briefly.
I'm pretty much off Nyheim Hines now that Andrew Luck has retired. I don't know what to expect. I still expect T.Y. Hilton to warrant at least a 20 to 22% target share. The team wants to feature Marlon Mack as a bell cow. He ran twice the routes per game from week 16 up through the playoffs than Nyheim Hines did. He wasn't efficient with his usage. So the team wants to make Marlon Mack an every down back. So Nyheim Hines has more risk than I thought he did, even in the 14th round. I think he he could either A, catch 65, 70 balls, or B, be a complete waste of a pick and be on the waiver wire by week 4. So I'm pretty much off Nyheim Hines now. But at the same time, where I already have him, I'm not dropping him. Because I don't think he's as undraftable as the industry is making him right now. We don't know what to expect from this offense. I think this situation is more cloudy than it's being given credit for. Marlon Mack might not be good enough as a receiver in the NFL to completely dominate backfield target share. So we'll see with Nyheim Hines. If you have him, hold him. But if you're drafting this week or if you're drafting this weekend, you can let Nyheim Hines go.
Let's talk about his quarterback, though. Jacoby Brissett. Jacoby Brissett is a guy that I think both of us like as more of a obviously a late round guy, but there's a lot of people that just assume, Andrew Luck's out of the picture now. He's retired. Jacoby Brissett's been a career backup thus far. He's just going to absolutely fall on his face. Neither one of us think that's going to be the case. This could be an extreme value in Superflex and 2 QB leagues. And I think this is going to be one of the best bye week injury fill-ins in 1 QB leagues that you're going to be able to find on the waiver wire. I think Jacoby Brissett could really surprise some people because, again, he's not Andrew Luck, but he's not a horrible quarterback either. This is a guy, to me, that is in sort of that Andy Dalton tier. He's not great, but he's good enough to continue to be the starter. And he's not one of those guys that's going to be a Ryan Fitzpatrick, Ryan Tannehill journeyman quarterback his entire career. This is a guy who I think can stick somewhere and be a backup for years. And if the starter gets hurt or retires, as we've seen, he could really step in and be very, very reliable. He's got look at the weapons. Look at the offensive line. Look at the running game as of right now. Not a lot of people believe in Marlon Mack still, but as of right now, look at the running game. Look at the coaching staff, the offensive scheme. He's got everything working for him. There's not a negative to go on with Jacoby Brissett.
Look, a wise man once told me, if you're a quarterback that can run, I'm interested. And that man was my new boss, Elliott Christ, over at TQE. So, okay, Jacoby Brissett in 2017, he ranked 6th in quarterback rush attempts, 12th in quarterback rush yards, 4th in QB red zone rush attempts, 4 rushing touchdowns, and on top of all of the rushing usage and the scrambling, he had 6 touchdown passes of 40 yards or more and 4 touchdown passes of 50 yards or more. Both of those were top 5 in the league among quarterbacks. Jacoby Brissett is not a bad football player. He's just had to back up Tom Brady and Andrew Luck over the course of his career. Jacoby Brissett, in my eyes, is that contra cheat code in drafts where you're getting somebody who does have top 12 fantasy quarterback upside in the last round of your draft. If you miss out on Kyler Murray, if you miss out on Josh Allen, you miss out on Lamar Jackson, just wait until the last round and take Jacoby Brissett. You're getting upside. You're getting a safe rushing floor, but he has a high ceiling as a passer, and that rushing floor makes his ceiling higher. I love the weapons he has. Him and like I said earlier, 22% target share for T.Y. Hilton. He's going to lock in on T.Y. Hilton. I think his value boosts Jack Doyle as well, who's another great late round target. And he's got more weapons. That offensive line is upgraded. We've said this 100 times, but this cannot be overstated enough. The offensive line has been notoriously upgraded. Frank Reich is an optimal play caller who likes to pass the football heavily. They drafted Paris Campbell in the 2nd round, who's a dynamic playmaker. They've got red zone options in Eric Ebron and Devin Funchess. Jacoby Brissett is going to be productive this year, whether anybody likes it or not, and he is going to be one of my highest owned best ball targets over the next week when I'm drafting these final 25 teams. If I got Jacoby Brissett on 15 of them, I would be happy.
Yeah, and I totally agree with Jacoby Brissett. And here's the thing that you mentioned. Who did he back up? Tom Brady and Andrew Luck. I mean, you're talking about 2 of the best quarterbacks we've seen in the last 15, 20 years. I mean, so it's not like he's backing up Marcus Mariota or Ryan Tannehill or CJ Beathard. Like this guy is backing up Andrew Luck and Tom Brady, the greatest quarterback of all time. And Ryan Mallett backed him up. Okay, Brian Hoyer backed him up. Matt Castle, but still, I just think there's something to that. You're learning from guys like Josh McDaniels and Frank Reich. That to me is more valuable than I think people like to give credit for. So that's Jacoby Brissett. We like him A guy that you also like is one of your other late round quarterbacks is Kyler Murray. Now, you just said give you all the cheap late round Arizona talent that you can get. Kyler Murray falls into that category. Do you like him? Here's my question for you before you get into your whole spiel on him. Do you like Kyler Murray as your starting quarterback in a 1 QB league?
Yeah, I'd draft Kyler Murray as my starter. Sure. Would I be as confident with Kyler Murray as I would be with Baker Mayfield, Ben Roethlisberger, Lamar Jackson? Probably not, just because I think, and like I just said about the backfield over in Indy, this is a little cloudier than we think, but the upside, Kyler Murray's upside is literally fantasy QB1. Like if there's a couple of quarterbacks that I think could supplant Patrick Mahomes as the fantasy QB1, it's a short list. You know, I've got Baker Mayfield, Deshaun Watson, and then Kyler Murray. So he can run 4,000 pass yards and 1,000 rush yards in his last year at Oklahoma. Optimal offense with Cliff Kingsbury. He's got some weapons to work with, and he's going to run. He's going to be running for his life behind that offensive line. It wouldn't shock me if we see him run for 50 yards in 8 or 10 games. You start off the bat with 5 fantasy points from your quarterback before any touchdowns or completions. Give me Kyler Murray, and I'm going to stack him with Andy Isabella.
So, Mark, do you like Kyler Murray? Okay, so a couple of guys that Kyler Murray for me, I don't mind him. I would rather have him as my QB2 in like a super flex or a 2 QB league. I don't really want to trust him behind that offensive line as my number one quarterback in a 1 QB league. But I can't really argue the logic that I won't go QB1. I don't think he has that ceiling behind that offensive line in year 1, but I agree. I think he could be in for an RG3-ish season. I've said it several times before. Even behind that offensive line, I think he could. I think he's a better overall quarterback also than RG3 ever was. A couple late round quarterbacks that I like. Sam Darnold. We've talked about it. I mean, the Jets and the 49ers are two teams that, in my opinion, are going to double, I will say the Jets will double their win total. They will go at least 8-8. The 49ers, I think, can as well. I think they have a good shot to do so. But those are the two teams that I think have the best shot in the league to double their win total from last season. And Sam Darnold, I think, is going to be a big, big reason why. The offensive line being rebuilt is a big reason why. Le'Veon Bell, getting guys like Jamison Crowder, using Robbie Anderson in different ways, getting more, more, putting him in more unique situations, I think is good for him as well. Look, I think Sam Darnold is going to take a huge second-year leap, and this, to me, is going to be huge for the Jets. And I think this is a guy that he's my QB 16 in 2019. He's going to take a huge step forward. I think I would feel perfectly safe with him being my QB1 in a 1 QB league. Another guy is Josh Allen. Josh Allen is a guy who I think is going to end up being a top 15 quarterback. I've said it before. I just think his ceiling now with guys like John Brown, who we're going to get to in a minute. John Brown, I think Dawson Knox, if he can develop, I think that's going to give him a rock solid receiving tight end option with a huge catch radius. And then, of course, you've got guys like Devin Singletary, Frank Gore. The offensive line is rebuilt. Hopefully, the coaching and the play calling will be a little bit better than it was in 2018. Obviously, an offensive line can cause that can cause some problems for that as well. I like Josh Allen a lot this year. I think he's really going to. I think we've seen it in the preseason too, from the little that we've seen. He has really improved his mechanics and he's improved his accuracy. I'm all in on Josh Allen this year. Now, however, there's a guy that you like that a lot of people are calling Josh Allen as well, and that's Lamar Jackson. I don't think that's an accurate comparison, but you're bigger on Lamar Jackson than I am. I get that he has a huge that I like his floor, I guess you could say, because he is going to be running the football a lot. The passing, I still am not huge on Lamar Jackson passing the football because I think his first instinct is to run the football, and I think that's what he wants to do. Whereas Josh Allen, his first thing that he wants to do is stay in the pocket and throw the football, and he's going to use his legs as a last resort.
But I'm fine with that. If Lamar Jackson wants to run 17 times a game, sign me up. He's going to average 5 or 6 yards a carry at least running as a quarterback. So if his floor is literally 15 to 17 fantasy points a game, before any passing, sign me up. I will take Lamar Jackson. I have him ranked above Josh Allen, but I do agree with you. Josh Allen, he wants to throw. And with John Brown, dude,
he's going to throw
me all the John Brown. There is no better receiver for what Josh Allen wants to do as a passer than John Brown. John Brown is going to cost you a 14th round pick as your wide receiver 6. You're only going to have to play him to cover bye weeks, and his spike upside, his upside as a spike week receiver, he could win you a game by turning 4 targets into 130 yards and 2 touchdowns just because he's so fast. He's so quick. And to go along with John Brown, one of my favorite guys to stack with Kyler Murray is a John Brown clone in Andy Isabella. 4.3140 at the combine. That's 100th percentile. He had a 97th percentile college dominator. He was 88th percentile spark score. You take these things, you take that elite athletic profile and give it an elite college dominator rating, and you have a target in fantasy football. The rookies that I want are the guys that are going to cost me nothing, but have upside as high as the sky. And with Kyler Murray, with a gunslinger like Kyler Murray, I will take Andy Isabella in a best ball as my last round pick.
So you mentioned John Brown. I like John Brown as well. I like him more. I don't mind him for season long. You mentioned you're only going to use him on the bye weeks and maybe for injuries a couple times. That's perfect that's a perfect price for a guy like that. He's not going to be consistent. He's just not. But that's I think that is going to end up making him, his ceiling is what makes him a great best ball target. And what like you said, could win you some games. Anthony Miller is a guy that I think, obviously, I like more than you, but he is one of my top late round wide receivers. To me, he's going criminally low. But look, the Bears I think are going to spread around that football. And I don't know. I've said before that I think Anthony Miller is going to annihilate 2019. And I don't mean he's going to be a wide receiver 1 or even a high end wide receiver 2. But this is a guy that I think could provide a lot of consistency in your lineup as your wide receiver 3 or 4, depending on how many you start. I really like Anthony Miller to take that next step now that he is healthy, and he's going to be healthy for the season, hopefully. I think he's going to garner more targets, and he's a big reason why I am not on Allen Robinson. Now, you are on Allen Robinson, but Anthony Miller, to me, is going to take a massive step forward in this offense, and I think he's going to be a big reason why Mitch Trubisky could take yet another step in this offense and in the NFL as a whole, because I think he's going to be such a reliable player, and Anthony Miller's another reason why I do not like Trey Burton this year.
Hey, I like Anthony Miller. He's my 10th highest owned best ball receiver, but Allen Robinson's my highest owned best ball receiver, bar none, and I've been stacking him with Mitchell Trubisky because Allen Robinson's the alpha. We can talk until we're blue in the face how they want to spread the football around more, and that's fine, but Allen Robinson, they paid him, and he is that good at football to warrant a 20 to 22% target share, especially in an offense that is going to have to throw the football more when you factor in defensive regression and quarterback progression with their passer in Mitchell Trubisky. So he's not going to outscore Allen Robinson, and I would bet my paycheck on that. He's not going to out-target Allen Robinson, and I would bet a paycheck on that. But I do think he takes another step forward. He was efficient from a fantasy point perspective on a per-target basis, and Mitchell Trubisky missed him deep a lot. Anthony Miller almost had a huge rookie season despite the shoulder injuries he dealt with. So just because I'm high on Allen Robinson doesn't mean I'm not high on Anthony Miller. I'm buying the whole pass game because they require no draft capital. You can get all of the Bears sans David Montgomery below what I perceive as market value. So I will take all the Anthony Miller I can get, so long as I didn't draft Allen Robinson in the 6th or 7th, because I don't want those two on my team. I don't want to have the two of them on my team together. So if I don't get Allen Robinson, I am targeting Anthony Miller.
So we got to move on to tight ends here in just a minute. So we'll finish up the last 4 wide receivers that we have here quickly. A team that you and I both like, the 49ers. There's a lot to like for this team. Marquise Goodwin is the guy you like. I wouldn't touch him if you paid me. But Deebo Samuel's a guy that we both are in love with. He's a guy that I believe you're not going to see a huge impact right off the bat, but as the season moves along, you're going to see that progression. You're going to see him being more involved in the offense, and you're going to see his impact be greater and greater in this Kyle Shanahan offense. And look, he's got to stay healthy. That's always been his biggest key. But man, this guy is chock full of talent. But you like Marquise Goodwin, especially in best ball, to at least stack week 1, I believe, as well, right?
Oh yeah, Marquise Goodwin's a great guy to stack in DFS for week 1 with Jimmy Garoppolo. He's going to start out of the gate. But my biggest thing here is Marquise Goodwin to start the year, Deebo Samuel to finish. Deebo Samuel is going to need some time to acclimate to the NFL level, but we're talking about a player with an 86th percentile SPARK score, 4.4840 at the combine, 82nd percentile burst score per player profiler. This is an elite athlete, and on a team outside of George Kittle that does not have an established alpha X receiver on the outside, I don't think Dante Pettis is an alpha. I do think he's going to be a great Z receiver. He could be effective in the slot. I do think he's a good football player, but he's not an alpha. Deebo Samuel over the second half of the season could transform into this team's alpha. He's that good.
Sterling Shepard and Golden Tate are two guys that we've talked about. The Giants' offense is really, for everybody talking about the quarterback situation and how Daniel Jones wasn't going to be good and how Eli just needs to go ahead and retire. The offense is really something that's, as I said, all offseason, Mark, and you heard me say it on the FSA live shows and, talking about the draft. This is an offense that's actually pretty sexy. There's really not a bad spot on this offense. The offensive line is improved. Okay. Golden Tate is there. Now he's suspended 4 games, but he is there. Sterling Shepard is there. And you've got, of course, one of everybody's favorite tight ends is Evan Ingram. So this is an offense that is actually very sexy, and it's even sexier now with my guy Daniel Jones, hopefully pulling the trigger at some point early on in the season. But even with Eli, we still like 2 of their weapons here because you can get them so late. Sterling Shepard and Golden Tate. Again, Golden Tate to start off, he is going to be suspended 4 games. Nothing you can do about that. To me, though, he's so cheap and it's such a value and he's such a reliable player, especially in PPR, that you can rely on him after. If you eat that 4-game suspension, just eat the 4 games and enjoy Golden Tate as your wide receiver 4, maybe even as your wide receiver 3 if things go great. Sterling Shepard is another great value late in that draft because he's another guy that I think you're going to be able to rely on week in and week out. If you have an injury to a guy that's out for 3 or 4 weeks and you gotta throw him in there, Sterling, you could do a lot worse than Sterling Shepard, especially as late as these 2 guys are going.
Sterling Shepard requires hardly any draft capital. You can get him in the 9th or 10th round. And I shouldn't say no draft capital, but he's cheap. You can get him as your wide receiver 4. And he's essentially this team's wide receiver 1 with Odell Beckham out of the picture. He's played 11 games with Odell Beckham out over the past 2 seasons, 8.55 targets, 5.3 catches, 68 yards a game for 13 fantasy points a game. That is good usage. If you're giving me 8.5 targets per game in the 8th round, extrapolated out to 137 targets and 84 catches over the course of a full season, give me Sterling Shepard all day. I'm a little underweight on him in best ball, but he's completely useful. Golden Tate, I'm a little less optimistic about because he's missing those first 4 games. But again, no draft capital. You can get Golden Tate in the 14th or 15th round. So given that he's only missing 4 games, he's worth the wait as well. I'll take Sterling Shepard first, but they're both good options.
All right, moving on to tight ends here. This is a conversation that I'm actually really excited about because I think there's a lot of late round value in tight ends. If you're trying to get Travis Kelce in the 1st or 2nd round and you miss out on him, or you miss out on Ertz and Kittle, and then you get to that, always talk about there's no middle ground anymore. There's no Antonio Gates sort of middle ground as there used to be. It's those 3, and then to me, it's those 4 with Evan Ingram this year. But for the most part, a lot of people believe it's those 3 and then a huge drop off. And these are guys that we think could really provide a lot of value, not only for just bye weeks and injuries, but season long as well. So first guy, David Njoku, you're huge on him. You're huge on the Browns offense. I think a lot of us are huge on the Browns offense. David Njoku is a guy who I think would be scratching that Ertz, Kittle, Kelce tier if he were on a different team and he wasn't surrounded by all of this huge chunk of great weapons.
I can understand that. I get the concern with David Njoku. The only concern is usage or value. One thing I want people to remember about this team is Todd Monken is the offensive coordinator. Tampa Bay had a 60% pass rate in neutral game scripts in 2018. Plenty of volume to go around after OBJ takes his cut. I mean,
Tampa Bay ranked above the league average in yards per attempt and passing success rate with Ryan Fitzpatrick and Jameis Winston as his quarterbacks. Baker Mayfield was one of Pro Football Focus's highest graded passers last year. I mean, from week 9 on, Cleveland posted a successful pass rate 4 points higher and a yards per attempt 1.5 yards higher than the league average per Sharp Football Stats. David Njoku has an 83rd percentile SPARQ score. He had an 88th percentile college yards per reception, has 76th percentile college dominator. He did this at Miami. He did not do this at a small market school. He is an elite athlete, per player profiler, of course, with all of these metrics. I mean, I can't plug them enough, but when I'm scouting young players that haven't broken out yet, it's my favorite tool to use. So this was a player profiler heavy episode for me because we were talking about a lot of young players that haven't broken out yet. But with David Njoku, there's going to be volume to go around. There's going to be usage to go around with David Njoku, and I don't think 100 targets is out of the equation on a team that's going to throw and that's going to have a dynamic passing game. The touchdown upside is through the roof with David Njoku at 6'4", 246 pounds. He's a matchup nightmare. Ran a 4.64 at the combine. He's fast. He's impossible to cover. His best comparable is Travis Kelce based on athletic profile and college dominator and usage. So I will take David Njoku. He's going as the tight end 9. If I miss out on George Kittle, OJ Howard, Hunter Henry, if I miss out on that tier, the next target on my eyes is 2 rounds later in David Njoku.
Speaking of young players who haven't broken out yet, TJ Hawkinson and Mark Andrews are 2 tight ends that are really starting to garner a lot of hype, especially Mark Andrews. But I want to start with Hawkinson. This is a guy I don't know if I can really express how much I love TJ Hawkinson, but I'm going to try. And I'm going to try doing this by repeating something that I've repeated forever. He is the best tight end prospect that we have seen in over a decade. He's a better all-around tight end prospect than Gronk. He is arguably a better all-around tight end prospect than Vernon Davis was coming out. This is a guy you need to take seriously. He does not have a weakness to his game. There is nothing. He was the 2nd overall player in the entire draft, in my opinion, after Quinnen Williams, arguably number 1 overall. He had 0 weaknesses. There's nothing he needs to work on. He's a great blocker. He's a great receiver. He's got great speed. He's got great ball skills, got great instincts. He learns the position very well. And that's one of the reasons why I don't think you need to be as worried about taking a rookie tight end and playing him week in and week out and season long. When you're targeting TJ Hawkinson, I don't think that this rule of give tight ends 2 or 3 years to adjust is going to be as relevant to TJ Hawkinson. This is an offense with Matt Patricia, who neither one of us like, but granted they're going to be run heavy, but when they pass, they are going to be passing to 2 people, and that's Kenny Golladay and that's TJ Hawkinson. And do not be surprised if TJ Hawkinson leads this team in targets. He is alone. He is going to make Marvin Jones almost fantasy irrelevant, in my opinion. He's going to garner a huge target share from Matthew Stafford. They're already showing a good rapport in preseason. This is a guy that I think people need to get locked and loaded into their lineups, in my opinion. I can't wait to start this guy. I think from day 1, he is going to make a huge impact. I'm not saying he's going to be Travis Kelce in year 1, okay? But I do have him as my finishing the season my tight end 7. And I think going as late as he's going, it's an unbelievable value.
TJ Hawkinson costs very little draft capital. I'm not comfortable with him as my tight end 1. However, I did take him as my tight end 1 in Scott Fishbowl 9 because I waited until the 11th round to take a tight end. So I hope you're right. He's got an elite athletic profile, elite college production. He's good at football. He went to a spot that has vacated usage with Golden Tate out of town. Golden Tate got traded last year, but we don't know. My biggest concern with TJ Hawkinson is this team ideology that they want to hashtag establish the run. I think that ideology hurts Kenny Golladay. It hurts Marvin Jones, and it's going to hurt TJ Hawkinson long or short term, in my opinion. But I am buying him as my tight end 2 in best ball. If I get George Kittle in the 3rd round, or if I get David Njoku in the 9th round, TJ Hawkinson's my target. He's so athletic, and I do think his ceiling is incredibly high with this athletic profile. So we're close on TJ Hawkinson, but we're not quite there yet. Now, this was an extremely data-heavy episode, and I'm curious, producer man, What did I get wrong and what did Chris get wrong in this episode tonight?
Just a couple of notes here, guys. Chris, you said David Johnson had a 54.8 elusive rating, which was the best in football in 2015, his rookie season. It was actually 58.4, and it was 10th among qualifiers. Mark, you said Dion Lewis caught 60-plus passes. He actually caught 59 in 2018. Other than that, super clean. Great show, gentlemen.
Thank you very much, producer man. Guys, it's been a blast as always. This has been our biggest episode. A ton of stuff went down. We tried to cover it all for you. Hope you guys liked it. This is going to probably take you more than a couple commutes to listen to. So we're happy to give you a longer episode tonight. There was a lot of stuff to talk about, and we hope that we did you a great service here. Look, we are a week away from the season. The RotoBros are not going anywhere. We're going to keep you strapped in all season long. So thank you guys for hanging out with us. Mark, before we go, tell the people again where they can find you.
So you guys know where you can find me. We'll get to that in a second, but there is an announcement here. Chris and I, your RotoBros, we are launching a Patreon before Thursday Night Football kicks off, before the Bears play the Packers, so you guys can come and support us financially. Now, you're not just donating to the cause. You will be getting exclusive content not available to the public. Guys, we would never take away the flagship podcast from you guys. The RotoBros podcast will remain free forever.
This is just another option, guys. It's just another option that you get from us.
Hey, you want to support Chris and I? You want to support the RotoBros? You want to become an official RotoBroski?
There we go.
Then sign up for the Patreon, become a subscriber. You will get exclusive access every week to the RotoBros DFS main slate breakdown podcast. You will also get access to all of my notes, all of my DFS notes for the week. You will get access to my notes for every showdown slate as well. So trust me, guys, you won't just be donating to a cause. You will be getting exclusive content not available to anybody else. So keep listening to the flagship pod. Don't forget to subscribe to us on iTunes, on Podbean and everything. Hey, and please leave a comment,
leave a review,
leave a comment, and we would appreciate a 5-star review. But hey, if we suck or if you think we suck, leave a 1-star review. Just go ahead and leave a review and leave a comment. Let us know how we're doing. Let us know what you want to hear. But anyway, you can find me on Twitter at Mark Wemken. That's MarkWemken. And you're going to find me twice a week over at thequantedge.com. I'm going to be bringing every Tuesday a snaps and targets report, and on every Thursday, an injury report that's going to highlight some of the best plays during the week based on what injuries have happened throughout the year. So, Chris, where are we going to find you, man?
You can find me on Twitter at Mind of McConnell, as always. That's at Mind of McConnell on Twitter. You can also find both of us, of course. We are the official podcast of FSA, and that is FSA Fantasy Sports Advice and Analysis on Facebook. You can find us both there. That is the largest, most active fantasy sports community on the planet. You will not regret joining this group. It's where Mark and I really just kind of birthed ourselves into this industry. So definitely check us out. Jump on Facebook, type in FSA Fantasy. The group will pop right up, and Mark and I will accept your request personally. Guys, thank you so much again for joining us. We are the RotoBros. Thank you guys for hanging out with us. And as always, keep balling, baby.